Welcome to Capitol Catch-Up, the podcast that brings you a clear look at what's happening on Capitol Hill. I'm Victor.
And I'm Lainey. Today we're unpacking a packed docket, a dozen recent bills, a slate of nominations, 2 committee hearings, and the latest entries in the congressional record. Let's get into it.
Let's start with the legislation. The first on the list is Senate Bill 4161, the Maverick Act. The title alone doesn't tell us the specifics, but the fact that it's a Senate bill means it's already cleared the House and is now awaiting Senate debate and a vote.
Right. Following that is Senate Bill 2934, the Protecting Americans from Russian Litigation Act of 2025. As the name suggests, it's aimed at shielding U.S. citizens from lawsuits filed in Russian courts, a move that reflects ongoing geopolitical tension and a desire to protect Americans from foreign legal pressures.
Next is Senate Bill 272, the Protect Infant Formula from Contamination Act. Infant formula safety is a public health priority, and this bill would likely strengthen oversight and testing to prevent contamination that could endanger infants.
Then we have Senate Bill 4378, the Protecting American Taxpayers Act. While the title is broad, it signals an effort to safeguard taxpayer interests, perhaps through reforms to tax administration or anti-fraud measures.
Shifting to the House, we have House Resolution 8543, which proposes authorizing the construction of a ballroom on the grounds of the White House. It's a symbolic and practical addition, potentially expanding the venue's capacity for official events and diplomatic gatherings.
House Resolution 8542 amends the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act and the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act to delegate authority to Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama over certain expanded submerged lands. This delegation could give those states more control over offshore resources and fisheries, impacting local economies and environmental management.
House Resolution 8555 tackles the federal minimum wage. It seeks to place the minimum wage on a durable path toward a living wage aligned with the national median, requires large, highly profitable corporations to lead the transition, and ends all subminimum wages. If enacted, it would raise earnings for millions of low-wage workers and could reshape corporate payroll strategies.
House Resolution 8557 addresses immigration enforcement by prohibiting long-term custody in U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement holding facilities. This could limit the duration detainees are held, affecting immigration courts and detention policies.
House Resolution 8538 amends the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to allow limited full expensing of certain reforestation expenditures. By letting companies fully expense reforestation costs, the bill incentivizes forest restoration, which has climate and ecological benefits.
House Resolution 8563 clarifies eligibility for small business loans. Clearer criteria could help more small enterprises access capital, especially in underserved communities, supporting job creation and economic resilience.
House Resolution 8553 directs the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to establish a precision oncology program for prostate cancer. This would bring targeted, advanced treatments to veterans, potentially improving outcomes for a common male cancer.
House Resolution 8536 amends the Clean Air Act to reform the renewable fuel standard. Adjusting the fuel standard could affect biofuel production, gasoline markets, and greenhouse gas emissions, with ripple effects for farmers and energy consumers.
House Resolution 8539 amends Title 54 of the United States Code to ensure historically accurate exhibits at National Park Service sites. Accurate storytelling at parks strengthens public understanding of our shared heritage.
House Resolution 8560 supports research, development, demonstration, and other activities to develop innovative vehicle technologies. This could accelerate electric and alternative fuel vehicle breakthroughs, aligning with climate goals and industry competitiveness.
Finally, House Resolution 8544 amends Title 18 of the United States Code to establish a 5-year post-employment ban on lobbying by former senior executive branch personnel and to prohibit such personnel from lobbying on behalf of foreign governments or entities controlled by foreign governments. This aims to reduce the revolving door influence and protect national security.
That's a comprehensive look at the bills. Many of them have direct implications for everyday Americans, whether it's a higher minimum wage, safer infant formula, or more accurate historical exhibits in our parks.
Moving on to nominations, the Senate is considering several key appointments. First, Robert Cicada of Florida has been nominated to be Director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The ATF Director oversees enforcement of federal firearms laws, a role that's especially visible given ongoing debates over gun policy.
Daniel Bonham of Oregon is nominated to be an Assistant Secretary of Labor. The Labor Department handles workplace standards, wages, and job training, so this position can influence labor policy and enforcement.
Scott Socha of New York is nominated to be Director of the National Park Service. The NPS manages our national parks and historic sites, so his leadership will affect conservation, visitor experience, and the preservation of cultural resources.
David Bratt of Virginia has been nominated as Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary to the Commonwealth of Australia. The U.S.-Australia alliance is a cornerstone of Indo-Pacific strategy, making this diplomatic post strategically important.
Carter Crowe of Texas is nominated as General Counsel of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for a 4-year term. The EEOC enforces workplace anti-discrimination laws, so the General Counsel shapes legal strategy and enforcement priorities.
Hal Duncan of Texas is nominated as Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget. The OMB deputy helps craft the president's budget and oversees federal agency performance, a pivotal role in fiscal policy.
Sean Planky of Pennsylvania is nominated to be Director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, Department of Homeland Security. The agency protects critical infrastructure from cyber threats, making this a high-stakes appointment.
Jeffrey Ledbetter of Virginia is nominated as Inspector General for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The HUD Inspector General audits and investigates HUD programs, influencing housing policy integrity.
Sean Kaufman of Georgia is nominated as Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response at the Department of Health and Human Services. That office coordinates the nation's response to public health emergencies, a role that has been front and center since the pandemic.
Juan Segura of Virginia has 2 nominations: a member of the Board of Directors of the Inter-American Foundation and Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere Affairs. Both positions involve U.S. engagement with Latin America and the Caribbean.
George McMaster of South Carolina is nominated as an Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, a role that can influence fiscal policy, tax administration, and financial regulation.
Finally, Richard O'Malley of Wisconsin is nominated as a Deputy Undersecretary of Defense. That position supports senior defense leadership on a range of national security issues.
All of these nominations will go through Senate committee hearings and votes. The confirmation process can be swift or drawn out, depending on the political climate and any concerns raised during vetting.
Let's turn to the committee meetings. On April 29th, the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Energy and Water Development held a hearing to examine the proposed budget estimates and justification for fiscal year 2027 for the National Nuclear Security Administration. The NNSA manages the nation's nuclear weapons stockpile, non-proliferation programs, and naval reactors. This hearing will scrutinize how the agency plans to allocate funds, maintain safety standards, and address modernization needs.
Earlier, on April 27th, the House held a series of hearings on several pieces of legislation. The Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2026, designated as House Resolution 7567, addresses agricultural policy and food security. The Stopping Indoctrination and Protecting Kids Act, House Resolution 2616, focuses on education content. Senate Concurrent Resolution 33 sets the congressional budget for fiscal year 2026 and outlines budgetary levels through 2035, essentially the long-term fiscal blueprint. Senate Bill 1318, the Foreign Intelligence Accountability Act, seeks to increase oversight of intelligence activities. And House Resolution 1346, the Nationwide Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act of 2025, deals with consumer choice in fuel markets. These hearings allow lawmakers to question sponsors, hear expert testimony, and gauge public impact before moving the measures forward.
The congressional record entries give us a glimpse of the day-to-day proceedings. On April 28th, the House and Senate met jointly to hear an address by King Charles III of the United Kingdom. The king thanked the American people for welcoming him and Queen Camilla during the semi-quincentennial year of the Declaration of Independence, highlighted the historic bond between the two nations, and spoke about shared democratic values, defense cooperation, and support for Ukraine. The address was met with applause, underscoring the symbolic importance of the transatlantic partnership.
The day before, on April 27th, the House held a morning-hour debate. Lawmakers recognized Zach and Tessa Stinson for completing the Boston Marathon, celebrated McCartney's of Altoona for its 100-year milestone, and discussed the Dairy Pride Act, a bipartisan effort to ensure honest labeling of dairy products. They also debated the Medicare Advantage Improvement Act, aimed at strengthening health coverage for seniors, and the Data Infrastructure Risk Reduction Act, which would task the Department of Homeland Security with protecting data centers from attacks. Additional topics included opposition to the USDA's plan to move its food safety headquarters, support for nonprofit security grants, hate prevention programs, financial fraud initiatives, ending the TSA shutdown, congratulating Penn State's wrestling team, and concerns about gerrymandering.
Those debates illustrate how Congress balances symbolic recognitions with substantive policy work, often in the same session.
Before we wrap up, let's briefly explain a few procedural points for listeners. When a bill is introduced, it receives a number, like Senate Bill 4161, and is referred to a committee. The committee may hold hearings, amend the text, and then vote to report it to the full chamber. If both the House and Senate pass identical versions, the bill goes to the President for signature or veto. Nominations follow a similar path. The President submits a name, the relevant Senate committee holds a hearing, then the full Senate votes to confirm or reject.
Understanding that process helps make sense of why some items linger while others move quickly. For example, the minimum wage bill, House Resolution 8555, will likely face intense debate in both chambers because it touches on economics, corporate profit margins, and labor standards.
And the nomination of the ATF director, Robert Cicada, will be scrutinized by the Senate Judiciary Committee, given the agency's high profile in gun policy discussions.
So what should listeners keep an eye on in the coming weeks? Watch for the Senate's action on the Protecting Americans from Russian Litigation Act, the progress of the minimum wage legislation, and the confirmation hearings for the ATF director, the NPS director, and the cybersecurity agency head. Also follow the budget hearing for the National Nuclear Security Administration, as its outcomes will affect national security funding for years to come.
That's all for today's deep dive into Capitol Hill. Thanks for joining us.
Stay tuned for the next episode of Capitol Catch-Up, where we'll bring you more analysis of the policies shaping everyday America.